Hi, my name's Earl Salzman, and the reason I'm talking to you is because I really believe society is at a tipping point. If we go on the way we are with climate change unabated, most of the species on the planet, including our own, are in grave danger. If, however, we tell governments in a loud, clear voice that we want an agreement that's meaningful and will help with climate change, then not only will we be able to stave off the worst effects of climate change, but we'll be building momentum toward creating a fairer world that reflects our values, where our welfare and our well-being come first. So, how do I come to be here? I'm a teacher. Um, I retired about 10 years ago, and now I'm a personal trainer. I've got a studio, and I'm also a music instructor. So I'm a busy guy. I'm not an activist by nature, but I read a book. And this book literally galvanized me. The message in it was so severe about climate change that I just had to do something about it. And here I stand before you. Okay, let's examine what climate change is all about. Let's find out exactly the danger that we're facing. So if we look here, we can see that there is no debate. There is no maybe climate change is real, maybe it's not real. It's real. 97% of all scientists say it's real. Most scientific publications have come out in favor of what the scientists have said. So literally, a massive majority of all scientists are saying that we are causing the world to heat up. We are causing what's called global warming. There's no debate about that. The guy on the left is James Hansen. He's sort of the godfather of climate change. He, in the late 80s, talked to the US Congress and apprised them of the dangers of human-caused global warming. He's somebody who's still out there now and still preaching the gospel, but he sort of got global warming to the masses, the fact that we were causing the world to heat up. So governments have known about this for decades. Where are we now? So the world in the last 150 years has heated up 0.8 degrees, 0.8 degrees Celsius, and the number on the left represents what the scientists at the UN have come up with as the breaking point for global warming. They say that if we keep temperatures from warming under 2 degrees Celsius, we'll avoid the most catastrophic effects of climate change. So, in terms of what we have right now and the window that we have to achieve this 2 degrees or less of warming, a group called the GDR, which is a group of climate scientists from Stockholm, in conjunction with some scientists from the United States, came up with these statistics that are based on the UN's own numbers. So what they're saying basically here is that in order for us to keep global warming to under 2 degrees, we have to stop emissions from rising right now. They are still rising, gotta stop them. And we have to decrease them so that we hit a decrease of 6% per year by 2019. And we continue that decrease from present day levels all the way through until we're at carbon zero. So you can see that the time for change is now. We have to have a complete turnaround in fossil fuel emissions. If we deviate slightly, the numbers on the right say that if we stop emissions from rising now, but we only decrease by 4% per year as of 2020, then we have a less than 50% chance of maintaining global warming under 2 degrees Celsius. So that's the pressure we're under right now. That's the window that's closing. Climate change, what does it do? We can expect, with unabated climate change, more storms like this one. We can expect more droughts. We've seen the tipping point now. We can expect famine that relates to droughts. We can expect shortages of water and mass migrations from coastal areas because they'll be submerged. So we're going to be facing overpopulation. All of this with unabated climate change. If you look at the next slides, they sort of tell the picture close to home. Miami will be gone. New Orleans as well. New York City flooded up to 34th Street. The New Jersey coast, Atlantic City, underwater. And on the other coast, we see the same thing will be developing. Now this is just in North America. The same thing is going to be happening to cities that are near the coast all over the world. So all the people in these cities will have to move somewhere. So you can see what that kind of effect would happen. There are people who say, who predict that there will be more deaths because of drought, famine, lack of water, overpopulation, and a decrease in the social order due to climate change than there were in both world wars combined. So that's what we're up against. What are we doing about it? You can see lots of words here, and they add up to basically nothing. We have had these climate change conferences, they're called COPs, and we've had them every year since 1995. There have been lots of well-meaning promises made and promises broken. Canada promised in 1997 in Kyoto to decrease their fossil fuel emissions, and then they backed out of the accord. In 2009 in Copenhagen, they promised to decrease emissions by 17% as of 2020, and we'll talk about them in a minute. They're nowhere close to doing that. So countries have promised, not just Canada, but other countries have promised to do things. We have no results so far. So do we give up on the process? I don't think so, because we have a special COP coming up now. It's sort of the last chance saloon. We've got a climate change conference where the parties have agreed they are going to have a legally binding agreement somehow, some way. We don't know what that will contain, but they promised to do that, and that's in December of 2015. So that's the only time, even with all the failures in the first 20 COPs, it's the only time everybody's in the same room. It's the easiest time to create some kind of agreement. And I really believe that's where we come in, and the added pressure from hundreds of thousands of millions of people saying enough is enough. The status quo is not something that is viable anymore. There are skeptics, of course, and there are deniers. This is a very emotional issue. As I talk to people, I'm realizing that more and more. But really, we're talking about a win-win situation here. Let's say everybody's lying, so we get a nicer planet with better jobs. Can't lose. Also, oil's going to run out in the next 100 years anyway. Why not do now what we're going to need to do later on? It just makes complete and utter sense. Now, we're talking about Canada and other countries and what they're doing today to combat climate change. So we look at Canada. Canada promised, as I said, to slow their emissions down 17% from 2005 levels. Here's what they've done. There's the little bitty thing there. That says 0.2%. According to Environment Canada, that's what how much Canada's emissions have shrunk as of today. They have no chance of reaching their promise of 17%. So, how are other countries doing compared to us? Here's the US, which we promised to align ourselves with, and they have a new agreement in place saying that they will cut their emissions by 26 to 28% 2025. Here's what they've done so far. So they are miles ahead of us. Now, if we go to Europe, the difference is even more stark. Denmark is the superstar of climate change. They have promised by 2050 that they are going to be carbon neutral. They will be completely divested of fossil fuels and be on completely green energy. Here's what they promised for 2020, and here's what they've done so far. Same thing with Sweden. Very similar numbers. Sweden and Germany. So we can see that there are countries out there right now who are doing the shift. They're showing us the way. They're giving us the template on a countrywide basis to change from fossil fuel-based economy to a green economy without great hardship to the general population. It is doable. They're showing us how. That's the hope we get from this particular slide. As I said, the U.S. just changed their status and upped their emissions promises in an agreement with China. So they brought China to the table for the first time. China has promised to start decreasing emissions by 2030. So that's obviously way too little and way too late, but the second or first greatest emitter is at least at the table for the first time and promising to do something about climate change. The Canadian political parties, here's where they stand as of right now. We have an election coming up. We have some very vulnerable politicians who are, at the very least, pragmatic. So if we're going to get into this. At any rate, if you look at this, obviously the Conservatives, their record speaks for itself, and they don't have any intent of changing. The Liberals have some nice words. The NDP have some actual money on the table. They're guaranteeing, for instance, $1 billion for research and development, which is still small change compared to the billions and billions that oil companies get as subsidies, so that the playing field for different energy sources is really not level. They're also for a carbon tax. Now, carbon tax simply means that polluters pay. So if a government sets a ceiling of the amount of carbon that can be in the atmosphere, and polluters exceed that, then they have to pay a tax per ton of carbon emissions. So polluters pay. And there's lots of different ways of dealing with this carbon tax. We know Ontario is considering implementing one right now. The biggest myth that we're inundated with is that somehow going to a green economy is going to affect us negatively in terms of numbers of jobs, and our economy will tank. In fact, it's really the opposite. If you look at what the CCCP says, the think tank, a Canadian think tank, they've done a study of the types of jobs that we get with pipelines and the oil economy compared to the types of jobs that we will get with a green economy. One thing that they've said is anybody who's, say, working in Fort McMurray as a pipe fitter, whatever they're doing there will be transferred. Similar jobs will be available when we have factory retrofits and increased public transportation. All the jobs are transferable from one type of economy to the other. So those skills are necessary in both economies. They've predicted that with a green economy, there will be 3 to 36 times more jobs. Pipeline jobs are a couple of years. The pipeline is completed, the job is over. They're dirty, they're dangerous, they're not safe. They are jobs, but they're short-term jobs. In the green economy, there will be safer, cleaner jobs, and their jobs are going to last. The sun isn't going anywhere. The wind isn't going anywhere. People will be needed for much longer periods. So we also have a gentleman who wrote a letter to the Star that caught my attention. Earl Grey is the former editor of Oil Week magazine, which is a big magazine in the oil patch. So he's a guy who was firmly entrenched in the fossil fuel business. And what he said in his article was, to put it mildly, interesting. He basically said we have to be completely nuts to keep going with an oil-based economy. We're basing our economy on a commodity that has been proven to be volatile. We're seeing the effects now with oil at $50 a barrel. Government is losing billions. Also, we're betting that the world is suicidal. We're betting that there won't be a climate change agreement, and all that oil that's in the ground will be brought up, processed, in the process, killing us. Is this what we want to base our Canadian economy on? There will probably, undoubtedly, be an agreement. The oil that's in the ground, scientists have said, if we burn it, we're in trouble. Big trouble. So, pipelines, he also said, take 30 to 40 years to break even. So again, we're betting that we'll still be a fossil fuel economy in 30 to 40 years. Not a really safe bet. Here's the part where we come in. What can we do? I've provided you with sheets, so it's very easy to email and tweet politicians. Politicians respond, especially in this election year, to pressure. So I've made it as easy as I can. I have a letter template there that you can copy and sign and send to a politician. I also have the addresses on that sheet of every MP from all three parties. So what I'm saying is, one thing that you can do is start emailing your local people. Start telling them their climate change is number one. Climate change, unless there's a meaningful agreement, count me out for your party. And it works. The more, if politicians get a slew of emails about climate change, they will shift their focus. What else can you do? Obviously, you're going to vote in the federal election, and you're going to vote for the party that has the best climate change plan. Inevitably, in my talks, somebody throws up their hands and says, how can we fight the government? We can't, I'm just one person. Well, so am I, and I'm here. But every person here has X number of friends. Tell your friends. Tell your friends what you heard here. Get on social media. Tell your friends on social media. I figure every person in this room has probably an average of 50 to 75 people within easy reach that they can tell about this stuff and help convince them to get on side here. Multiply that by 20 people and we're talking over 1,000 people. This is how momentum builds. Every person doing something about this problem. This is not something where we can sit it out. You can certainly become a presenter. I'm looking for people all the time to help present to groups such as yourselves. And on the Get Involved sheet, there's levels of involvement. Check off what you're comfortable with. I want to collect those and leave you with the how to bother a politician sheets. So do what you're comfortable doing, but do something. It's all worthwhile. So when you go home tonight, take a look at your kids. Take a look at your grandkids. What kind of world do you want to leave them? Do you want to leave them a world where their dreams are shattered before they start? Do you want to leave them a world where survival is the name of the game? We have enormous power. If we work together, governments will bend to our will. So I know that I want to look my kid in the eye and be able to tell him I did everything I could to create a livable world for him and for his children. Thank you. To download the document with the letter template and politicians' addresses, please go to my website at the center of the screen. And feel free to contact me at my email address and phone number. I look forward to your comments.